Good morning. It's an honor to kick off General Mills' first ever Force for Good investor event, focused on environmental, social, and governance, or ESG topics. I'm glad you could join us. Stay tuned after our prepared remarks for a live Q&A session. Before we get started, I'll remind you that our remarks today include forward-looking statements that reflect our current views and assumptions. The supporting presentation on our Investor Relations website includes a list of factors that could cause our future results to be different than our current estimates. Though this is our first ESG-focused investor event, being a force for good is not new at General Mills. It's been in our DNA for more than 150 years. When Cadwallader Washburn founded the company that would become General Mills in 1866, he built the largest flour mill of its day on the banks of the Mississippi River in Minneapolis, Minnesota. As a pioneer of innovation, Washburn developed new milling methods to create a product that would be marketed as the best flour in the country. 12 years later, on May 2, 1878, catastrophe struck. Sparks ignited highly flammable flour dust, a common issue in the industry at the time, and the entire mill exploded. 18 people were killed, and the mill and several city blocks were destroyed. Washburn's immediate concern was for the family of those whose lives were lost. He established a charitable fund to help support them. His next priority was to construct the best, most efficient, and safest mill that had ever been built, ensuring this disaster would never happen again. And after developing groundbreaking new dust collection technology, Washburn did something unexpected. He shared the innovation with his competitors to make the entire milling industry safer. This innovative and forward-looking response helped spur tremendous growth and secure General Mills' position as the industry leader. I share this story about our company's early vision of innovation and being a force for good because it remains a core part of our DNA to this day. It reflects our values, and it's the lens through which we live our purpose. General Mills exists to make food the world loves. We can't make food the world loves in the morning and be a force for good in the afternoon. We need to do both all the time. The two are inextricably linked. Being a force for good is a central pillar to our Accelerate strategy, alongside boldly building brands, relentlessly innovating, and unleashing our scale. Over the course of today's presentation, we'll share how General Mills is driving significant impact on planetary health, including leading the industry in advancing regenerative agriculture, a key enabler of our commitment to generate net zero carbon emissions by 2050. We'll also discuss how we are protecting our people, including advancing human rights and diversity and inclusion within and beyond General Mills. And critically, we'll share how we are integrating ESG across our enterprise, from brand strategy development to long-range financial planning. When we think about the success of our business, we need to consider the needs of our many stakeholders: consumers, employees, shareholders, customers, and our communities. Our Force for Good addresses a broad set of climate and social issues and has led us to make bold commitments that benefit all of these stakeholders. We organize our many Force for Good work streams across 4 priority areas: planet, food, people, and community. First, we focus on regenerating our planet by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, advancing regenerative agriculture, protecting key watersheds, and making our packaging recyclable or reusable. We've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions footprint by 16% over the past 10 years, and 100% of our 10 priority ingredients are now sustainably sourced. Second, we are improving food security by increasing global access to nutrition-forward foods. We are committed to improving the variety, nutrient density, affordability, and accessibility of all of our products. General Mills is the largest provider of natural and organic packaged foods in the U.S., and we recognize the importance of sustainable food systems. Third, we protect our people through our human rights-focused and diversity and inclusion commitments. 86% of our employees say that General Mills is a great place to work, and our Force for Good efforts help us attract and retain the very best talent. And finally, we are strengthening our hometown communities through our charitable giving, employee volunteerism, and more. In fiscal 2020 alone, our product donations to food banks enabled 29 million meals globally, and 83% of our worldwide employee base volunteered in their communities. These are areas where General Mills can drive meaningful impact, and they're inherently tied to the success and to the resilience of our business. Over the past year, our brands have delivered tremendous impact in support of our Force for Good mission. From Yoplait donating a refrigerated truck to help feed those in need, to Gushers and Fruit by the Foot stepping forward to elevate young Black voices, our brands are on the move and making a difference. And by doing so, they're connecting deeply with our consumers. When General Mills brands unleash their scale to solve problems, big things happen. We know that you, our shareholders, care deeply about integrating climate and social impact into your investment decisions. Therefore, we remain committed to disclosing our progress on this important work. In fact, General Mills has been reporting on our corporate responsibility efforts for more than 50 years. 6 years ago, we became the first company in any industry to publish a climate goal approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. Our track record of leadership and transparent reporting has been recognized by many organizations. For example, General Mills is currently included in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, CDP's A-lists for climate and water, and the FTSE for Good Index series. We recently ranked number 6 overall and number 1 among CPG companies on Newsweek's Most Responsible Companies list, including earning the highest overall score for social responsibility. Being a force for good is an integral part to our leadership, beginning with our board of directors. 50 years ago, we became one of the first large public companies to establish a public responsibility committee on our board. Our entire board has been deeply engaged in our ESG work, coming at the issues with a diverse set of experiences and perspectives. In fact, of our 11 independent directors, 5 are women and 4 are ethnically diverse. This diverse representation, coupled with our board's breadth of experience across consumer goods, public policy, global leadership, innovation, finance, and risk management, results in high-quality governance over the business's strategic direction and long-term resilience. This diversity of representation and experience is evident in our management team as well. For instance, 50% of our global professional positions and 1/3 of our officer positions are held by women. And we know there is still more work to do to ensure our employee base better reflects the diversity of our consumers, which is proven to lead to stronger business performance. The challenges of the global pandemic have further reinforced the importance of maintaining Force for Good as a core pillar of our strategy. Through the uncertainty of the past year, General Mills has met the moment by taking care of our people and making the food the world loves and needs. Thanks to our team's truly remarkable work, we service significantly higher global demand for food at home, despite supply constraints and many other challenges. We also stepped up to support our communities. For example, we executed a Manufacture to Donate program, leveraging underutilized away-from-home food production capacity to produce $5 million of General Mills products, which we donated to Feeding America to help nourish families in need. Our General Mills Foundation has given an incremental $9 million in charitable grants during the pandemic to help people around the globe, with a focus on providing emergency food assistance and other basic needs. And our work didn't stop there. Our brands, including Cheerios, Nature Valley, Annie's, Betty Crocker, and Blue Buffalo, donated more than 17 million meals to Feeding America food banks. And we provided support globally through our partnership with the Global Food Banking Network, supporting communities in Brazil, the UK, and Australia. Most recently, we coordinated with public health officials to host on-site vaccination clinics at our headquarters and more than 20 other sites to keep our employees and our communities safe. These are just a handful of examples of how our teams around the world have responded to the pandemic with compassion, with care, and with creativity. Amidst all this good, there is still a lot of work to do. This phrase has embodied the critical issue of racial justice that is top of mind at General Mills. This is especially true today, May 25th, which is the anniversary of George Floyd's murder in our hometown of Minneapolis. It has been an emotional and a challenging year, drawing global attention to the systemic racism and inequity that still exists in our society. To drive a more inclusive and equitable society for all, we need to focus both within the four walls of General Mills and outside in our broader community. We have prioritized our efforts in areas where our expertise can make the most difference: equitable food access, equity in education, and equity in representation. We come to this moment humbly, recognizing that we have a lot of work to do. It will take bold actions across our society to drive lasting and positive change. And while, out of necessity, we focused on caring for our communities over the past year, we didn't lose sight of our ambitions to take care of our planet. We believe that sustaining our planet's natural systems will not be enough to feed a growing population. We need to regenerate them. That's why, more than 2 years ago, we announced a commitment to advance regenerative agriculture practices on 1 million acres of farmland. This will help us achieve two important goals: to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% across our full value chain by 2030, and to reach net zero emission levels by 2050. We also know that making strides in these important areas will help us connect with a growing number of consumers who, likewise, care about these issues. By weaving purpose and our force for good work into our brands, we realize mutual benefit. In a moment, we'll share a few examples from our North America Retail and Asia and Latin America segments, where our brands are leveraging their purpose to make an impact and drive business results. And those are just some of the many brands in our portfolio that are leading with purpose today. While plenty of work remains to be done, I'm optimistic about the future. General Mills remains committed to being a force for good as a company and through our brands. And we firmly believe that our business outcomes are increasingly linked to how well we care for our planet, food, people, and our communities. As I mentioned earlier, our force for good work is both broad and complex. In our remaining time today, we will focus on a few important elements of our planet and people priorities. First, Mary Jane Melendez, our Chief Sustainability and Social Impact Officer, will discuss our initiatives in regenerative agriculture and recyclable packaging. Then, Brad Hiranaga, Chief Brand Officer of our North America Retail segment, will share how we're bringing this to life through our Nature Valley brand. And next, Mary Jane will cover our work on human rights and diversity and inclusion. Then Brad and Sean Walker, Group President of our Asia and Latin America segment, will share how we're integrating those messages into our Wheaties and Betty Crocker brands. We'll close our prepared remarks with Kofi Bruce, our CFO, talking about the role of ESG in driving returns for our shareholders. Then we'll open up our question and answer session facilitated by Jeff Seaman, Vice President of Investor Relations. With that, I'll turn it over to Mary Jane.
Thank you, Jeff, and good morning. At General Mills, we are thinking and leading differently, unleashing our scale and driving systemic change for the better. As Jeff mentioned, General Mills has been taking actions and reporting on our progress and corporate responsibility for more than 50 years. A decade ago, our main planet initiatives and commitments focused on sustainability, including setting a goal to sustainably source 100% of 10 priority ingredients. We achieved that commitment in fiscal 2020 after 7 years of work. As we advanced our sustainable sourcing work, we also began making strides to reduce agriculture's use of pesticides, synthetic inputs, and water required to grow key ingredients for our products. Along the way, we stopped seeing climate change and its effects as abstract models or far-off presumptions. We've all begun experiencing extreme weather events with greater intensity and frequency. And these events are having an impact on people's lives and our ability to consistently make food the world loves. For example, a year ago, we faced a challenge sourcing sugar beets due to freezing and thawing across the northern United States. Meanwhile, dry weather severely reduced crop yields in South America last year, impacting the global price of corn. And just a few months ago, the Texas ice storms disrupted many consumers' access to food and clean water and had a knock-on impact on supply chains. If we can't source key ingredients for our products, our consumers and other stakeholders will be worse off. To make food the world loves for another 150 years, we depend on the Earth's resources, which means we need a healthy and resilient planet. The case for regeneration is strong. Today, we're facing a steep decline in the health of our planet and ecosystems. The world is losing farmable topsoil at an unsustainable rate. More than 30% is already degraded, with an alarming 90% of farmable topsoil at risk over the next 30 years. When 95% of our food comes from the soil, there's no doubt this is a crisis, especially with an estimated global population of 10 billion people by 2050. That is a lot of families to feed, and our global food system needs regeneration to make that future possible. Agriculture is central to limiting the harmful impacts of a warming climate too, as 1/3 of the world's emissions come from the food system, nearly 80% of which comes from agriculture. This creates opportunity and urgency for our sector to find solutions and drive impact. We saw the urgent need for change at an important time in our sustainability journey. The more we learned about what makes a sustainable farm work, the more we began to view the farm as a living, connected ecosystem. Healthy farming practices can improve soil health and sequester carbon, pulling it from the air and storing it in the soil, making the farm more resilient to extreme weather events. This insight brought about a paradigm shift at General Mills. We realized that sustainability is no longer enough. We need to work in a manner that regenerates the Earth's resources. While we're focusing today's remarks on what we're doing to regenerate agriculture, we see regeneration as a mindset. It informs other aspects of our business, like how we think about making our packaging recyclable, or how we'll continue to advance human rights across our value chain. Using our scale to maximize our impact, we are working with farmers to advance regenerative agriculture in key regions where we source our most greenhouse gas intensive ingredients, such as wheat, oats, and dairy. Sourcing these ingredients accounts for 60% of the emissions across our value chain, so we are focusing on the Scope 3 emissions beyond our own operations to drive impact. For us to reach the ambition of reducing our greenhouse gas footprint by 30% by 2030 across our full value chain, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, we need to focus our efforts upstream in agriculture to minimize our impact to our value chain's carbon footprint. There's a lot of promise in regenerative agriculture to do just that. That's why, in 2019, we announced a commitment to advance regenerative agriculture practices across 1 million acres of farmland by 2030, which represents approximately 25% of our North American footprint. We focused our efforts and resources on this initiative to maximize our impact. Regenerative agriculture is by far the most critical solution to delivering our 2030 and 2050 greenhouse gas reduction goals. So we've taken the lead in this space within our industry, partnering with farmers, advancing the science, and measuring outcomes. Simply put, we are all in. We're hearing more about regenerative agriculture in industry events and even in Super Bowl ads, and that's a good thing. But what does it mean and how do we define it? At General Mills, regenerative agriculture is a holistic, principles-based approach to farming and ranching that seeks to strengthen ecosystems and community resilience. We are looking beyond a single ingredient stream to how the whole farm ecosystem is being managed, and we're partnering with farmers to bring regenerative agriculture principles to life on their farms. The 6 regenerative agriculture principles include understanding the context of each farm operation. What works in oats for North Dakota is different than what works for dairy in Michigan, so we need to adapt the principles to each unique farm ecosystem. Minimizing soil disturbance by utilizing low or no tillage farming techniques. Maximizing crop diversity. keeping the soil covered year-round, maintaining a living root in the ground year-round, and integrating livestock wherever possible. When these principles are applied, regenerative agriculture produces measurable improvements. Agriculture is only considered regenerative if it benefits ecosystems and communities. We're taking an outcomes-based approach to regenerative agriculture to assess the holistic impacts of agricultural practices on the farm ecosystem. We are enabling farmers to test and learn so they can drive the most desirable outcomes. With that in mind, we're developing robust scientific methods to measure 4 key outcomes: economic resilience in farming communities, soil health, water quality and quantity, and biodiversity. For example, we measure how soil health, insect and bird biodiversity, and farm profitability change as farmers transition to regenerative systems. Making improvements in these measurable outcomes is key to delivering on the promise of regenerative agriculture. To deliver our 1 million acre commitment by 2030, we are engaging farmers in the regions where we source oats, wheat, and dairy to accelerate adoption of regenerative agriculture and increase the capacity of local organizations to grow the movement. We have focused on helping farmers implement regenerative agriculture through several pilot programs in North America. We are looking to unleash our scale in the market where we generate 80% of our global net sales and where we can have the biggest impact. Where we see opportunities to advance regenerative agriculture on key ingredients outside of North America, we will expand our leadership. And by looking beyond our own ingredient sourcing footprint to address barriers and bottlenecks, we will benefit the whole food industry. We're energized by the level of farmer interest in regenerative agriculture and the demand for resources to support their journey. We now have more than 70 farms in our pilots, with 70,000 acres targeted for regenerative management. This is a great start, and we're building momentum as we learn from early rollouts. We are piloting a range of strategies for accelerating farmer adoption of regenerative agriculture in key sourcing regions. In one pilot strategy in the southern plains of the U.S., our partner, Understanding Ag, facilitates a program that provides technical assistance to farmers over a 3-year period, including education, mentorship, and connection to a peer network where farmers can connect through field days, discussion groups, and social media. In this pilot, we've also introduced an ecosystem service payment, which provides an economic support for farmers in exchange for the positive impact they're driving for society. One of our newer pilots involves a partnership with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, which will provide grants to local organizations in the Great Lakes Basin and the southern Great Plains regions of the U.S. This funding will support hiring field conservation professionals to work directly with farmers, developing and implementing stewardship actions and driving positive environmental and economic outcomes. Because we're in the early stages of this work, we're testing different models and remaining agile so that we can help to scale the most effective practices. We are helping implement new technologies to quantify regenerative agriculture's outcomes on farms and the planet. Over time, we'll work to assess impacts across whole supply sheds, and the entire industry will benefit. Because it is labor-intensive and expensive to take soil samples and scout for birds and insects at scale, we need to leverage technology. Utilizing data from satellite imagery, we will track changes in agricultural practices over time, including presence of cover crops and amount of soil tillage. This data will feed models estimating how outcomes like greenhouse gas emissions and water quality respond to regenerative agriculture. These technology solutions and numerous studies we are conducting with universities and other scientific partners will help us better understand the complexities of the farm ecosystems and how to help farms thrive in the decades ahead. Our planetary health progress and commitments span our entire value chain, including product packaging, a topic which is top of mind for many consumers. From Annie's mac and cheese to Nature Valley granola bars and beyond, our brands are designing packaging to be recyclable and reusable to reduce our environmental impact, and innovating to make our materials better, not only for General Mills, but the industry. By 2030, 100% of packaging for General Mills brands will be designed to be recyclable or reusable. In 2020, 88% of our US packaging and 72% of our Europe and Australia packaging was recyclable. We're leveraging our global scale to drive bigger impact through our packaging innovation. For example, our Europe and Australia segment team is working to make Old El Paso Mexican meal kits with recyclable packaging, and will transfer that team's innovation to our Old El Paso packaging in North America. Now I'll turn it over to Brad Haranaga to share some big moves we're making in the recyclable packaging space that are resulting in industry-leading innovation.
Thank you, Mary Jane, and hello, everyone. My name is Brad Haranaga, and I'm the Chief Brand Officer of our North America Retail segment. As General Mills' largest segment, we are uniquely positioned to deliver on the company's mission of being a force for good. When we build our brands with purpose and unleash our scale, we can drive tremendous impact. I'm excited to talk about how our Nature Valley brand is creating a more recyclable future. Nature Valley is a brand of firsts. We started with a big one when we created the world's first ever granola bar. Now, after 3 years of research and development work, we have released the first ever recyclable snack bar wrapper approved for store drop-off. The new wrapper is now rolling out in our Crunchy Bar line and will extend to the rest of the US Nature Valley portfolio by 2025. Just like Washburn in the 1800s, we chose not to patent the wrapper, rather to encourage other brands across the industry to apply the technology and innovation to their own products. We aim to use our global scale for good and make an even bigger impact on our industry and the planet. This action by Nature Valley is intended to be a catalyst for kickstarting a flywheel of good and growth. Going the store drop-off route allowed us to tap into a system that is already in place at major retail stores across the US. From a Hartman Group's sustainability report in 2019, we know 70% of the US population wants to decrease plastic waste, but doesn't know how. And more than 90% of Americans are within 10 miles of a store drop-off recycling station. Those numbers add up to a potential 295 million people who could participate in store drop-off recycling. It's really exciting that these wrappers now have a life after Nature Valley. They can be turned into things like composite lumber and decking equipment, or even park benches and playgrounds. Check it out.
You know, if we take that wrapper back to the store, it can be recycled into other stuff.
Well, I want my wrapper to be a hang glider!
How about a park bench?
Dad, you need to think bigger.
Now you can recycle your Crunchy Bar wrappers in store.
This is just one example of how our brands in North America Retail are solving real human problems and growing with heart. When you consider the powerful work we're doing to advance our Force for Good missions across many of our brands, you can see how we'll drive a positive impact on planetary health and drive stronger growth for our business. I'm now going to toss it back to Mary Jane to talk about the way we protect our people.
At General Mills, we put people first. Across our full value chain, from sourcing ingredients to making and selling more than 100 brands around the world, we're committed to providing employees with a safe, inclusive, and rewarding workplace. Our ability to deliver on that commitment is one of the reasons we've remained in business for more than 150 years. Let me share more about our commitment to people, including our human rights framework, racial equity commitments, and why diversity and inclusion have long been critical to driving business results. We believe that societies, economies, and businesses thrive when human rights are protected and respected, and that human rights abuses of any kind are unacceptable. As one of the world's leading food companies, we have the responsibility to respect human rights throughout our business and value chain. And while philanthropic programs can play a necessary role in mitigating human rights risks, those programs alone do not offset the potential impact within our value chain. Recently, we launched an internal initiative to assess and address our human rights impact in alignment with the United Nations Guiding Principles, or UNGPs, on business and human rights. To better understand our human rights risks and to guide our work, we are following a strategy framework. This includes identifying the greatest human rights risks across our value chain and prioritizing the most salient issues, integrating human rights expectations into policies and business practices, including our human rights policy and supplier code of conduct, and effectively mitigating risks and remedying harm through stakeholder engagement, taking action, and tracking progress. We will advance this initiative and expand our disclosures in line with the UNGP reporting framework. Our focus over the coming year includes building due diligence capabilities to proactively identify human rights risks and take action through our Global Responsible Sourcing program. Our journey to advance respect for human rights is one of continuous improvement, and we'll share more on that progress in the 2022 edition of our Global Responsibility Report. Within the four walls of General Mills, we work hard to foster a culture of inclusion and belonging that allows all employees to thrive. Ensuring diversity of input and perspectives is core to our business strategy. We work to build a culture that acknowledges, respects, and values all dimensions of diversity, including gender, race, sexual orientation, ability, backgrounds, and beliefs. We are committed to advancing racial equity within and outside our workplace, and we have taken many actions to create a diverse and inclusive culture, from recruiting and developing a diverse board and senior leadership team to advancing legislative actions in support of the LGBTQ+ community. Our work to build a diverse and inclusive culture continues to evolve. More than 4 years ago, we launched an event series called Courageous Conversations to give our employees space to have candid discussions about important topics, such as the Me Too movement, the recent verdict in the trial of Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, and the rise of Asian hate in the U.S. Roughly 1,500 employees participate in each session, and those who attend report an increased commitment to engaging their colleagues' unique perspectives at work. As another example, we've invested significant resources into developing content and training on allyship, and we've made that content available to the public to help others accelerate their own allyship journeys. After today's event, I'd encourage you to check out that content at generalmills.com/allyship. Our leadership team is held accountable to serving as champions of inclusion and allyship, and they expect the same from their teams. We regularly measure our progress in fostering a culture of inclusivity. George Floyd and Daunte Wright's killings in our hometown community served as a wake-up call to the broader and complex picture of systemic inequality that Black people face globally. We stand united against all acts of racism and are committed to humbly learning and finding authentic ways to be part of the solution. We are a founding member of the Minnesota Business Coalition for Racial Equity, which brings together more than 50 Minnesota-based corporations and community partners to help drive meaningful change toward a better Minnesota, specifically with and for Black Minnesotans. At General Mills, we are steadfast in our commitment to drive change by focusing on equitable food access, equity in education, and equity in representation. We've already begun acting against our commitment to drive equity in education in our hometown community. Research from the Institute of Labor Economics shows that Black students who have even one Black teacher in elementary school are more likely to go to college and less likely to drop out of high school. In the US, only 2% of teachers are Black males, and that figure is just 0.5% in Minnesota. So Box Tops for Education partnered with a nonprofit organization called Black Men Teach and is providing $500,000 for scholarships and loan forgiveness to help increase the number of Black male teachers in Minneapolis area classrooms. And to engage our consumers on this issue, we're enhancing our Box Tops mobile app to make it easier for participants to find and support schools in need. To deliver on our commitment to equitable representation, we have committed to improving racial equity in the U.S. by taking 3 specific actions: doubling the representation of Black managers, increasing minority representation in our workforce to 25%, and doubling our spend with minority-owned suppliers. To increase our spend with minority-owned suppliers, we prioritize our supplier diversity program. We have more than 50 years of experience growing relationships with diverse suppliers in the U.S., and we have expanded the program globally. Through partnerships with advocacy organizations, we match diverse suppliers with our business opportunities. We see benefits from the program, including increased innovation and more market insights about our increasingly diverse consumers. And we drive positive social impacts, leveraging more robust data analysis by providing opportunities to underrepresented groups and fostering job creation and economic development. We know intuitively that a diverse and inclusive workforce will better help us to deliver our Accelerate strategy, and recent research backs up our intuition. A McKinsey study from May 2020 found that the greater the gender diversity on executive teams, the higher the likelihood of that company's profit outperformance. In fact, there is a substantial performance differential of 48% between the most and least gender diverse companies. The findings on ethnic and cultural diversity are equally compelling. The same McKinsey study found that greater ethnic representation creates a higher likelihood of outperformance. Similarly, research by the Wall Street Journal found that socially diverse groups are more innovative and productive than homogeneous groups. We've been on a journey to transform how we bring innovative new products to market with agility, and this research confirms our belief that building diverse teams is critical to our success. Bottom line, it's the right thing to do, and the business case is clear. Now I'll let Brad and Sean shed light on how we're advancing inclusion through our brands.
Wheaties has been featuring athletes on the box for almost 90 years, starting with Lou Gehrig in 1934. And over the past year, Wheaties has been on a journey to transform into an empowering platform to inspire the next generation of champions. The brand first partnered with Black athletes, starting with Jackie Robinson in 1949. And when the fight for racial justice came to the forefront last year, following the murder of George Floyd, we knew Wheaties could take a meaningful stance behind its purpose, redefining a champion from someone who's just on top of their sport to someone who's also a champion off the court or field, making people's lives better. We took the leads from champions themselves, most recently with Serena Williams, LeBron James, and Tommy Smith, who are speaking out and inspiring the next generation to keep fighting for change. First, in June 2019, Wheaties partnered with Serena Williams, focusing on her position as an activist athlete.
The day I stop fighting for equality will be the day I'm in my grave.
When I was younger, I thought I knew what it took to be a champion. Champion was something you were, a timeless athlete celebrated with billboards and cereal boxes. As I grew, so did the measure of a champion. Today, champion is more than what you are. Champion is what you do. We unite, we inspire, we champion.
Serena then shared her moment in the spotlight by helping launch the U.S. women's national soccer team onto a Wheaties box during this time. Serena believes a champion embodies a person in all aspects of his or her life, and she was proud to share her time on the box to show women supporting women and to inspire the next generation of girls. Then we honored LeBron James as our next Wheaties champion in October of 2020. He was featured on the box along with several families from the LeBron James Family Foundation's I Promise program. Wheaties donated to the program and highlighted LeBron's mission to address racial inequity through education in his community. And just this past February, in celebration of Black History Month and the Withdrawn Arms documentary, we created a Wheaties box featuring the original activist athlete himself, Tommy Smith. All sales of this box are being donated to the NAACP, and the Wheaties box will continue serving as a platform to celebrate courageous action. I'll give you a brief summary of the impact. Between June 2020 and April 2021, Wheaties sold more than 5.5 million boxes featuring champions who stand for racial equity. These boxes remind consumers of color that Wheaties champions are for them and for their future. In partnership with Serena, LeBron, and Tommy, Wheaties generated more than 1.6 billion impressions, the brand's Instagram fan base grew by 40%, and the business returned to retail sales and market share growth. And most importantly, Wheaties and their champions have supported organizations leading to the fight for civil rights, like the NAACP and the Equal Justice Initiative, with donations totaling nearly $900,000. Wheaties and General Mills brands are on a mission to inspire the next generation and use their platforms to make the world a better place. Now, I'll turn it to Sean Walker to share an example of how this comes to life in our international business.
Thank you, Brad, and good morning, everyone. I'm Sean Walker, Group President of our Asia and Latin America segment. Diversity and inclusion is a force for good priority for Team Osla 2. We begin each equity conversation in our own communities and look for opportunities to scale up our impact. Building up on our work in Minnesota, General Mills and other companies in Brazil founded a business coalition to promote racial equity. And I'm incredibly proud of our continued effort to advance inclusion on a global scale through our purpose-driven brands. Our recent Betty Crocker brand campaign in the Middle East is a great example of our dedication to being a force for good and our ongoing commitment to our legacy of corporate responsibility. In celebration of Betty Crocker's 100th anniversary, the brand team in the Middle East launched a new campaign titled "The Kitchen is for Everyone," focused on promoting gender equality and inclusivity in the kitchen and beyond. The campaign was inspired by a 10-year-old boy who lives in the United Arab Emirates named Sultan. He sparked a viral debate about gender equality when he noticed that Betty Crocker's Arabic packaging only spoke to women. After hearing Sultan's story, the Betty Crocker team worked to create meaningful change across the Middle East. Let me show you the advertising.
The kitchen. For some reason, we believe it's a sacred space, reserved for a select few. This is a place for inspiration. You can find joy in precision. There is no failure, just a reason to rise again. So rise, fire up the oven, whip up some enthusiasm, and let's get baking. Celebrating 100 years of Betty Crocker. The kitchen is for everyone.
This campaign served to promote positivity and create lifelong memories for people of all genders, ages, and backgrounds. As part of the campaign, we redesigned the region's entire line of Betty Crocker products with gender-neutral language. The new gender-neutral packs have been rolled out across stores supported by a television and digital ad campaign that encourages consumers to make more memorable moments with Betty in a kitchen where everyone belongs. The outcomes have been powerful. Not only did Betty Crocker grow its reported net sales more than 20% in the Middle East region, 70% of consumers surveyed in Saudi Arabia said that they believe that the kitchen should be a shared responsibility upon seeing the ad campaign. That's up from 40% before seeing the ad. This Betty Crocker campaign is yet another example of how our purpose-driven brands are driving change and relevance with consumers. With that, let me turn it over to Kofi Bruce to discuss how our Force for Good work drives returns for shareholders.
Thanks, Sean, and hello everyone. Our Force for Good mission plays an important role in driving long-term shareholder returns. We are integrating our Force for Good commitments across the enterprise, from brand strategy development to long-range financial planning and capital management. For this reason, I serve on our Sustainability Governance Committee, and I am actively working to integrate ESG across our strategic planning and global finance functions. I'll touch on a few key areas of financial integration today. In order to drive top-tier shareholder returns, we focus on 4 levers: sustainable sales growth, margin expansion to grow profit faster than sales, capital discipline to convert earnings into cash, and returning that cash to shareholders through dividends and share repurchases. Force for Good is embedded across this shareholder return model. First, on sustainable sales growth, a recent Harris poll indicated that all else equal, nearly 80% of consumers would switch brands if a more sustainable version were available. Research published by the NYU Stern School of Business found that while sustainability marketed products are only 16% of the market, they drove more than half of the growth. And among branded players, sustainability marketed products grew more than 7 times faster than other products, indicating consumers' willingness to pay premium prices. Our job, as Brad and Sean highlighted, is to weave purpose into our brands to increase their relevance with consumers and to drive strong, profitable growth over the long term. Next, on margins and profitability, we are making strategic choices to invest financial and human capital into our Force for Good work. These investments, coupled with our potential to transform ingredient supply by advancing regenerative agricultural practices, will make our business more resilient and adaptable to change in the future. We'll fund these investments through holistic margin management and other efficiency initiatives, enabling us to stay on track to our long-term profit growth goals. Finally, we're integrating Force for Good into the ways we manage capital and cash. In April, we were the first U.S. consumer packaged goods company to enter a sustainability-linked revolving credit facility, which includes a pricing structure tied to our progress in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and using renewable electricity in our owned operations. Pragmatic, long-range planning requires an understanding of the risk that climate change presents to our future business results. To that end, General Mills signed on as a supporter of the Task Force for Climate-Related Financial Disclosure, or TCFD, in 2019. And in 2020, we commissioned TrueCost to assess our risks related to climate change, including physical risks as well as risks associated with the transition to a low-carbon economy, using a robust data-driven approach. You can find more information about this framework in our 2021 Global Responsibility Report, which we released in April, and you'll continue to see more climate-related risk disclosure from us in the coming years. In closing, I hope you've seen how being a force for good is a part of our DNA and a central element of our Accelerate strategy, and how we're leading in this space, integrating our ESG efforts across the enterprise, and how it drives value for all our stakeholders. Thank you for joining us this morning and for your interest in General Mills. With that, we will transition to the Q&A session.